So I wanted, number one, welcome. Thank you so much for joining uh, Nate and myself and the Enablement Squad for a very special birthday webinar today. For those of you who are not already a part of the Enablement Squad, we are a group of peer enablement professionals who our main goal is to raise others' voices and make sure that everybody in the enablement community has a way to elevate themselves. So, if you are not already a part of the Enablement Squad, we welcome you. Please join us. We have a Slack channel. We also have some LinkedIn presence as well. We would love to have you. Now, for our special birthday presenter, I want everybody to welcome Nate Davison. Nate is a seasoned expert in the tech industry, and he's known for turning challenges into opportunity. He has a very strong background in sales, in business administration, and obviously in enablement. And he's helped a lot of different companies grow from startups to industry leaders, including a decade of success at Indeed, which is pretty amazing. He's also a certified Dale Carnegie trainer in Westchester, offering consulting and fractional enablement support. So I welcome you, Nate. We're so excited to have you. Again, happy birthday. Take it away. Stage is yours.
Hey, thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you for all of the happy birthday celebrations too. No place I'd rather spend, and I mean it genuinely, than with a bunch of like-minded individuals in the enablement community. And with that, let's make sure that the screen is working. The obligatory enablement question. Everybody see things okay? Okay. Fantastic. It's great to have you all. We're going to really be spending this time together talking about enablement and really that evolution that's happened over the 10, 15 years. I'll have a little bit to share about my own story, but I'm much more interested in learning from each other, bringing in data and relevant information, and most importantly, how we can all be providing value in this continually changing world too. I'm not alone on this call by any means. All of you are here and super important. So let's take a moment now to get to know each other. In the chat, please let us know, where do you live? Or if you're a bit of a nomad, where are you currently? What is your current job title? Or if you're in between or looking for new opportunities, what's a recent title that you feel connects to this? And then finally, how would you describe your job to a friend or a family member, especially someone that may not be in enablement themselves? I will go ahead and start us off. I'll drop this off in the chat, and then let's come on in. I'll give everybody a moment to put that in as well. I am in Long Island, although currently I'm in Florida just for the next 24 hours with my family celebrating the town. Being a development leader and facilitator. And I focus on helping employees within a company get better every single day. We have Timmy, thank you for dropping that with the Enablement Squad label in Orange County, California. Welcome. We have Indiana. Casey, it's great to see you. Austin, the big island of Hawaii. Love it. Part of my honeymoon, Clark, was spent over in Hawaii. That's amazing. Raleigh, it's great to see Ottawa. We've got Madrid, Miami. Keep them coming. I think this context is also helpful, even to get a sense for, we all have different titles. We may all have different responsibilities. We're going to actually spend a decent bit of time talking about that over the next few minutes. But we're also going to find some similarities and connections too. So keep these coming. If you haven't already, again, where do you live, your current title, and then a job description, maybe to a friend or family member too. And as we continue, here is what our agenda looks like for today. Peter's jumping ahead of just a bit. We have three main things that we're going to focus on. First and foremost, taking a brief moment to look at that path from sales training that many of us were familiar with, perhaps early in our tenure, to this go-to-market enablement strategy that we have today. We're also going to be looking at that diverse perspective. So enablement today means very different things to different companies. But there are also some really strong commonalities that we're going to be exploring, and I think we can embrace and celebrate together too. And then we're going to conclude this with perhaps the most important part of this is, how do we make sure that we are providing value? This is what we've been marketing leading up to the session. But Go ahead if you could. If we're also interested to know why you're here, why you're sacrificing a portion of your time to be here. So if you have something specific you want to get out of within these parameters, go ahead and just click the raise hand button for a second. You can come off mute. And let's hear it. Why are you here? Why is it that you've signed up to be a part of the session today? Who wants to share first?
I'm always looking to deliver value in my role and would love to, I love these webinars to learn from others on how they're delivering value.
Yeah, thanks to me. So really that third point of enabler as a value driver. Awesome. Nina, I see the hearts on that. Love it. Nina, maybe beyond what Timmy shared, what else brought you to the table today?
I think it's just being when it's funny when I was working on the how do I explain this to my mother in the chat. I think it's recognizing that the story somewhat changes over time, and it's really just being more confident in that story and having it more resonant.
Yeah, that story. And Nina, how long have you been in the enablement space?
About 10 years.
Okay, great. So probably by title, you and I have about the same time frame in this space. So I'm looking to learn even from your perspective, both in chat or if you have good contributions to build on that too. Thank you. So these are the three big areas that we're looking to get. Making sure that we can get a quick history. I think it's helpful to know if we want to continue to go forward. It's helpful to know where we've been, where we are today, and then where we are continuing to go. True to enablement style. We can all learn from each other. This is absolutely not a all talk you listen session. I have some really good information I think we can all benefit from learning. What we're going to really get out of this thing is when we're able to share our own experiences, either through chat or if you have something that you want to share, you can even raise your hand, come off mute. We have over 100 that have signed up for the session. Some may just sign up so they can get the recording afterwards, and that's totally fine too. But please raise your hand. If you're feeling bold, go ahead and just come off mute. Add something in the chat, even just the camera on, the smile, and the head nod goes a long way. Dropping the emojis, the reactions, all those things help as we're being a part of the conversation together. So let's just take a quick snapshot at the genesis of sales enablement. And to do this, I'm going to take you all the way back to the 1900s. If you can remember a time where we didn't start our dates with a 2 and a 0. All the way back to the late 1990s. Wow, the 1900s. There were these two pioneers, John Aiello and Drew Larson. And really, a lot of what they were looking to accomplish was based on identifying inefficiencies and inconsistencies in the space. And while they didn't use the term sales enablement, it was the first time that really there were consistent structures in place where we could effectively address sales reps' needs, where we could create solutions to unrepeatable sales processes. And so in the 1990s is where it started, but from the 1990s through the 2010s, this was very much focused on just helping that sales rep organize more effectively. We're certainly few exceptions for it, but in many situations, there's more of a conversation of how do we get sales reps to sell the product? How do we get sales reps to sell the service? By mid-2010, we started to see the shift from just selling the thing, selling the idea, to thinking about the problem we can solve, and shifting from more of a product-centric sale to much more of a customer or buyer-centric sale. And that's where many of us are living in today. We're living in this world now that we're thinking more about the centric, focusing on the people, the outcomes that are coming in there too. By 2016, we had legitimized ourselves from a revenue enablement perspective. This is when the Revenue Enablement Society was officially founded. Just a couple short years later, in October of 2019, this group, the Enablement Squad, was created, all with the objective of sharing best practices and tools, the community, allowing us all to grow and develop. By the end of 2020, starting even to the current, we're really starting to think about not just sales reps, but client success reps, CS reps, support reps, engineering teams, even HR teams. There's all sorts of different groups that we're now working with. So let's open this up to the group. When you think about your time, and maybe that time was, this is my first enablement job and I started last week. If that's you, congratulations. or maybe you're someone like Nina and myself that's had more than a decade in the industry. How have you seen your role or roles change since you started in enablement? Uh, if you have something specific you could share, you can go ahead and raise your hand. Let's hear it from the group. How has your role changed since you first joined enablement? You can put that in chat, or you can put that just by raising your hand. All right, great. Blair, let's hear it from you.
Hi, everyone. Happy birthday again, Nate.
Thank you, Blair.
So I think originally when I started enablement, one, they weren't calling it enablement. It was more focused on training and development. And over time, it has expanded to include things like, and teams like project management and operations and intake and capacity planning. And so there's this operations function that also encompasses enablement. And then beyond that, we're now focused on the effectiveness, right? How is our training landing? How are we measuring impact? How are we helping to drive revenue? How do we get closer to being able to identify that what we are actually training on is resulting in growth in revenue? And so that has been a huge shift, I would say, over the past 8 years.
Yeah, thank you for that, Blair. And Blair, I'm very happy to have you specifically on this call. Have you for so many. Blair and I have a similar roadmap, have shared a similar story, both shared time at Indeed. And really, we're right in the center of seeing this evolution. Even Blair and my team at one point were two totally separate teams and merged into a single super team in a way that was able to be more valuable and productive for our audience as well. I love also the measurement, and we're going to come back to that. We're going to talk about that too. When I first started in sales, it was very much completion. Did you do it? And then we evolved to, did you like it? But obviously, there was a lot more than just did you do it and did you like it? And we've really progressed a lot. And we're going to talk more about that too. Blair, thank you for the contribution. Michelle, I see you came off mute.
Yeah, I'm going to come up to you to just share a couple of chat responses here. Two of them had to do with being more of a strategic partner and having a strategic voice, rather than, a few years ago when it was more task taking. We also had one person talk about how I think it's funny that people in L&D don't know what enablement is, and yet they're so very similar. And commented that it seems like enablement is more of a focused version of L&D, but they're basically the same thing, which is interesting. And then a lot less last minute live trainings than there were years ago, which is also nice.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. And Brittany, your call out about the not understanding what enablement was. I'm home, with the family in Florida right now for Thanksgiving. I mentioned to my mom I was running this presentation about enablement, and my mom was like, I've only ever thought of enablement as someone that like helps other people use drugs. And I was like, all right, so we're not on the same page. But it was an illustration to be a reminder that if we step outside of ourselves, there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstanding. And I think sometimes that results in us becoming order takers or task, just being handed off all sorts of things. And that can be challenging. It's great to be identified as someone who is helpful or valuable, but it can also just be very damaging if we're constantly just trying to survive by taking the orders and supporting those too. Casey, could you come off and share just a little bit more? You mentioned in the chat that we have that more strategic voice that Michelle called about. What does that strategic voice look like to you, or how has that change happened since you joined the space?
So it's a lot more on like timing so for example, we're going to be replacing our CRM here in February.
Oh, cool. Good luck.
Thanks. Normally it would just be like, if we're going to release on February 10th, hey, Casey, February 1st, we have this new CRM that we're going to be launching. We need your team to do training. And that's how it would, be in the past. But we have been involved since the initial, hey, we need a new CRM. And I've been able to communicate, here's what the timeline looks like in order for my team to be able to develop resources for this. Here's what my team needs to know. Here's who as a resource we're going to need to be able to have. So from a strategic standpoint, we're brought in from the planning stage and being given much more of an input. If I say my team does not have what it needs in order to enable your reps, we're not going to launch. They're not going to launch it like unprepared. So we get more of a say and we get more of a a planning perspective, I guess.
It's great to share it. And Casey, if you could stick with me just for a minute. So that seat, that sounds like a change that happened. You didn't always have that voice, and now you do. Um, Certainly it's longer than we could probably cover in an hour-long session, but maybe in a couple sentences, could you share with us how did that change? How did you get that seat where it sounds like you didn't previously have it, but now you're being invited to those conversations and not just the last item on a long to-do list of train people and take vacation is typically what it is. Train people, and then the person that's responsible takes vacation.
I just said no. Like, and I know that that sounds oversimplified. Okay, so I I don't want my people to burn out. I'm very, very like, this is important to me that they don't burn out. And so I'm not going to give my team something that is going to require them to work over the 40 hours that you essentially like said that's what they are being employed for. And it took a while for me to learn how to say no, and here's why, or no, but we can do this instead. And the next, like once we reach that agreement at the end, I say, hey, this is just way too much. Like bring me in the beginning and I'll show you, like, here's the process flow that my team needs. And let's talk through this. Like a lot of my role, I used to get feeling weird about it because I don't create as much. Now it's more like conversations for them to create. But learning to say no in a way that didn't turn people off from working with us was a skill that I had to learn, but it made it so much easier on my team.
Hey, that's great. Well, and it probably was no to something one time that caused them to say, well, why no? And allow them to sort of challenge your no and invite a conversation to have
No,
more
it was
meaningful.
over and over and over again.
It was over and over again. Okay.
So it was over and over.
And sometimes it does take that, right? We're going to talk more about the importance of setting boundaries before we sign off today. But that is so incredibly important. Casey, thank you for sharing that. So even if you're thinking from an individual contributor going from in the seat where you were trained, now you're training others, we're seeing this evolution, this change happen again and again. My expectation is that you're way more interested in the value that we can drive and the resources we can offer than my own story. I'm going to offer a very concise version of the last 15 years of my own story professionally, just to give a little bit of additional context of where I've seen that evolution and sort of experience at the center. So again, I don't think this is probably, most people signed up for this webinar so they could hear a lot about me. So you'll hear very little bit about me specifically, but this is something that may give a little extra context as we continue. I started in sales in 2009. I moved up from Florida to New York with $600 in my bank account, not enough money to pay my month's rent if I didn't do the job. It was a small startup working at a company that was above an Indian restaurant. They constantly smelled in the office like curry at all hours of the day. That was my first spot. And my training really consisted of a 3-day boot camp. I was given a script and told some basic information about the history of the company. And then after that conversation, on day 4, I was on the phones and I was told my daily expectation was 3 sales or 4 hours of talk time or 150 dials every single day without question. By the way, I was a salaried employee. I think some of those things by today's standards may not be even fully legal. That's where I started. After 2.5 years of surviving and learning the ropes and really trial by fire in so many different ways, by 2012, I had my first opportunity. It was more of a mentor opportunity, trainer by title, but I was also still selling. I was still doing the job myself. And then in 2014, I had the opportunity to take on the first job where I actually interviewed, applied for, and was given the opportunity to be a full-time sales trainer. And that was my title. My title was specifically sales training. My focus was specifically on how do I help the sales, how do I train the sales reps to be better at their job of selling. By 2017, we saw really the first shift towards enablement at Indeed. This is where Blair and my team started joining forces, working on things like vendor management, working on things like internal meetings, where it's not just the training that we're delivering, but now it's also the events we're putting on, the kickoffs, the responsibilities had grown as an organization. In 2019, it grew again, where now it was sales enablement. And at the same time at the organization, we started also building a CS enablement. And those teams became under a single VP with a local focus of global learning enablements. And then by 2023, we saw another evolution of the company where all of those teams, the sales support teams, the product solutions team, business analyst teams, and more, all became this global go-to-market sales effectiveness team, responsible for an entire gambit of every aspect that touched revenue and supported revenue. We also, during this time, experienced ebbs and flows. We saw that in some cases the organization grew and grew and grew, and then the business wasn't really sure what to do with us, and we experienced a massive restructuring a couple of times and saw things whereas the company was trying to figure out the best way to manage and support the organization, and more so support the customers as well. So over that 15-year run from being a sales rep to seeing the go-to-market enablement today, these are the big themes that we saw from a 2014 job description, where it's really focused again on that content-centric, the supporting sales team. Maybe there was a new technology we were responsible to onboard. Most of the job descriptions for people that were in the space involved some version of onboarding people to do the job, creating content and organizing that. Maybe that was through collateral or LMSs or different presentations or case studies. And then as new tools were implemented, essentially running a miniature onboarding for those new tools to make sure that everybody knew how to use them. And basic reporting. Blair shared this as her own evolution of the basic reporting that people saw into completions, maybe basic insights as to which materials were being used most frequently. By 2024, present day, we've seen this shift to be more of a strategic business partner. So focusing more heavily on data-driven, outcome-focused, and continuous learning. Developing and implementing comprehensive strategies, things like aligning to the business objectives, making sure that we're encompassing more about the content management, the training, the whole experience, the reinforcement, the coaching, jumping into things like analysis of not just whether they used it, but what sort of impact are we making as a result of it? And focusing on things like the culture of this continuing learning environment where we had sales managers being a part of the process and training and coaching and developing and giving them the tools and resources they needed to be successful with their own people. So these are the three big shifts that we saw that I've seen over my last 10 years. We probably can all relate to this. And I think in some cases, there's a bit of a microcosm that happens that we all go through this evolution, not just based on the time that we're all living, but as an organization goes from a small seed startup or a new enablement team to a team that continually has these different aspects, going from more of a support role to a strategy role, where we evolve to not just be that support function, but Casey, as you shared, that strategic partner and helping with those conversations. Going from implementation to aligning to the business objective. So it's not just the do it, but really focusing with the job descriptions today on a more of a data-driven decision. What are we seeing that says we need to move forward with this today? Or in some cases, what are we seeing that says, hey, let's hold off just a little bit because maybe this isn't the right opportunity. And I think this, I felt most importantly in my own experience, was this reactive to strategically thinking. It was easy to fill a 40-hour week taking orders as we were growing at Indeed. And probably until about 2019, really the pandemic was actually one of the first times that we had a lot of people scratching their heads and saying, hey, what do we do? Like, how should we do it? Instead of just giving the orders or saying, here's what we need today, here's what we need to focus on. And so that shift from being reactive or an order taker to being more strategically thinking, coming to the table with recommendations, coming to the table with ideas. These are the big themes that we've seen, but certainly not an exhaustive list as we continue to go in that sense. Really where we are today, we are much more of this go-to market enablement strategy. And this, again, may look different. I imagine looks very different based on my research from one organization to the next. But it seems that more and more frequently, we're focusing on all of the teams that may impact or influence revenue, impact that message as we go to market. So let's open this up to the group. If you have your phone, fantastic. You can pull it out and grab this QR code. And I'm going to drop this in the chat as well so we have it. Let's go here and let's share what departments we're actually involved with today when it comes to supporting our organization. There are probably some conversations that we're having all the time, some conversations we might not be having at all. But what you'll do is you'll scan the QR code. I see we already have 15 people that are in there. You can scan that or you can click on the link that's in the chat. and then just mark off which organizations do you work with today as part of your enablement support, your enablement strategy. Once you have it, you can scroll down to the very bottom and click on that submit box down at the bottom. So. Right, starting to see a few people reading through that. Here's what it looks, and it'll keep updating in real time here. Here's where we're at so far. We're seeing a lot of people naturally supporting things like sales. Sales still is the leader, I think, for a lot of different departments that we may be responsible for. But now look at these other players that are coming into the equation. Client success, almost as high in terms of level of support and responsibility as sales. Leadership, right there with it. I we'll come back to leadership a bit more. Hey, Jason, that's a great call out. Jason, could you come off mute? What's your relationship today with FP&A? And for those that may not be as acronym friendly, if you could quickly define FP&A, that'd be helpful too.
Yeah, FP&A, financial planning and analysis. So really with helping to develop the forecasting for the organization. So really a critical outcome as we help them to develop pipeline, and then especially for publicly traded companies to be able to forecast to the street effectively. It's a huge driver.
That's great. Were you one of the people that marked other thinking about FP&A as you submitted that?
Yes.
That's great. Is that a daily conversation, a quarterly conversation, annual? We talk about budgets or revenue. How often do you speak?
It depends on where you are in the quarter. It can be as much as biweekly to as frequently as daily, if not almost hourly, depending upon board meetings, investor calls, and quarterly earnings. So, and where you are at the end of the quarter.
Yeah, that's great. Jason, thank you for sharing it. Just a quick, you can just use one of the reactions right here in Zoom. Who else has regular conversations with financial planning, a seat at the table, or at least periodic conversations they're a part of? I see Blair with your hands up. I see a few reactions that are dropping as well. Yeah, Jason, absolutely. It looks like you're not alone here. It looks like there's definitely a few on this call that are having similar conversations, hopefully productive conversations, a listening conversation and not just a telling conversation. That I guess is as much up to the leader as it is up to the organization in some cases too. Great, thank you for that. And so it's good just to have that data as an enabler. I love good data. What might be surprising when you look at this? Anyone see this and a little surprised by something so high or something so low? Maybe it's a group that you are not talking to, but you see a lot of other people are talking to, or the vice, as Jason called out. Maybe it's someone that we're not talking to that you live and die by and you're talking with all the time. Feel free. You can just come off mute on that one. Share what surprises you. If it's a little easier, you can also type that in the chat. What surprises you about the results that we're seeing here?
So Nate, it's Amy. It doesn't surprise me, but I think what should be included, and maybe it's kind of assumed under sales, is your partner organization within your company. A lot of times having a history, and Nina will probably be laughing, but having a history dealing in the partner world for so long, they tend to be the back end of what we now call enablement. It's everything else. So you always need to bring them to the table, especially if you're expecting them to bring 20, 40% of your revenue. So partners should always be in the conversation as part of a team member. So that would be my only thing, is partners need to be included in this conversation as well.
Hey, that's great. And Amy, just so we're all speaking the same language, when you say partner, what comes to mind for you?
Your partners are your solution providers, your system integrators, your VARs, your people that you use to help sell your solution or your product or your service. It's an extended sales arm of the companies.
Yeah, thank you for that, Amy. Great contribution there too. And it is, I have lived in worlds, I think we all have, we're the last item on a to-do list. And and sometimes we can, I loved Casey, what you were saying, we say no. Sometimes the business doesn't give us that opportunity and we have to move forward, but we're scrambling because we haven't been a part of those conversations. We're not the partner that they're talking with. And then there's this expectation, maybe even a publicly announced statement that says this is happening. And our reps are learning about it about the same time that we're learning about it, that that's happening in the next 10 days or something like that. Hopefully we haven't experienced too many of that, but I think there's so many moments that we have had those. So as often as we can be that catalyst, those bridge builders, to build those bridges, to bring people into that conversation, so immensely valuable. Amy, love that contribution. Thank you for that. Yeah, Jason called that out too with the compliance being under HR and legal. Yeah, so compliance is interesting. I've seen compliance sometimes fully under legal, sometimes compliance, lives in another strange executive level position, but making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed as well. We don't want to run so far towards the end and then we find out that there's something logistically we're not able to do because it violates some sort of understanding that we have at the company or data that we're not able to share or something like that too. Fantastic. Well, let's keep rolling here. If we think from a multifaceted nature of enablement, there are all sorts of things that we should be mindful of. There are all sorts of variations. We saw this in the submissions and the titles just a minute ago. Our jobs, even by the same title, may look very different from one organization to the next. As somebody who is, in addition to offering sort of consulting work and fractional work, I'm also trying to figure out my new home and where my next full-time step will be. And it's amazing that the exact same job title will look not only by description, but salary band and all sorts of other things. I've seen differences of $50,000 to $100,000 in terms of what a job description is offering. In some cases, you're responsible for a team of 20. In other cases, you're an individual contributor responsible by yourself. And so even by title, we're seeing all these organizational variations. We're seeing it different from one department to the next if there are multiple enablement teams at your organization. The thing that brings me a sense of peace, though, is that we do still share this common core objective. And it may look slightly different from one organization to the next, but there's this common objective of equipping those customer-facing teams, making sure that the resources, the information is consistent, the knowledge is there, the skills are developed so that people can buy and people can engage. So how we do it may look different. The tools we use may look different, but across so many different organizations, we're still experiencing this commonality of how do we help our people do their job better. If we think of it from a customer-focused thing, how do we make sure we're solving the right problems for the right customers at the right time? Here, from everything that I have researched, from all that I've seen, these are probably, again, not an exhaustive list, certainly not an exhaustive list, but these are 4 things that consistently show up in terms of the expectations and responsibilities of modern enablement today. The first is this personalized buyer experience, tailoring what we're doing to the different departments, the different groups that we are working with, so that it's relevant to the buyer. The second is that we're no longer a door-to-door sales company where everybody is shaking hands and having conversations in person with their potential customers. Now there's a lot of virtual engagements, whether it's selling asynchronously, whether it is leveraging tools like this on Zoom. And so our organizations are tasked with the responsibility of helping to ensure people are getting there. And then the third is this data-driven decision-making. It's no longer, I feel good about this. I think this is great. Looking at those numbers and saying, hey, based on this, we need to move forward with this. Here is the gap that we're seeing in terms of new product adoption. And because we have this gap to new product adoption, these are the behaviors that we're looking to change. And in order to change these behaviors, here's what they need to learn. And this is the experience we need to create. Hopefully, we're not simply saying, hey, I feel good about this. I think we should run this training. Sometimes our instinct based on our previous experiences is valuable. So much more so these days, we're using analytics to measure that impact, both before we deliver and then after we do, to justify our spend, to justify what was done. And then finally, we are tasked to be much more agile. It's not printing a script and handing it to people and expecting for people to just simply follow along. The world is changing. 18 months ago, no one was talking about artificial intelligence. Even 4 years ago, most people weren't talking about virtual training. They were thinking about ways to bring people into offices and train everybody consistently around ideas. As the world changes, as the world develops, as enablement teams, we are charged to think dynamically. How do we approach situations differently and not simply grab from our old bag of tricks and deliver the same concepts again and again and again? So these are the 4 key areas of focus that we have found with modern enablement. Which leads to this question: if that's what we're trying to accomplish, that personalized buyer experience, virtual selling experience, data-driven decisions, being agile in what we do, what are the obstacles keeping us from doing that? We can come back into Zoom. Let's add that into the chat. What are the key obstacles or challenges that we are experiencing today to allow that might prevent us from delivering on our expectations right now? Yeah, so Michelle leading the charge. Bad data is a challenge. Michelle, could you tell us a little bit more? What does bad data mean? Why is that a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think that oftentimes most of the data is not great, especially when we're looking at a CRM, because we're relying on our sellers to put in the right information, the right forecasting, the right everything. And it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So whatever goes in there, we have to rely on those results of those reports in order to then decide what we as enablers need to attack next. And if the data is not good, we're probably going to be attacking the wrong things. So that makes our job very difficult. And also it's not a good look, when we do an initiative and it's like, hey, this didn't do anything. And it was because of the data.
Yeah, and Kate, I think that actually connects. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. Kate, if I can have you elaborate here, I think what you shared about getting that buy-in, I think so often is connected to data or what you're bringing to the table. Why has that been a challenge for you, Kate, or potential challenge of getting buy-in or funding from leadership?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of focus on, funding roles for, sales or account managers who are more, direct revenue enablement players, if you will. So being able to, explain or fight for the need to, enable those people, because it's like, buying a bunch of lamps but not having anywhere to plug them in, it's like needing to have the training to support those people. And, it's like, which data do you pull? How do you pull that data? And then even if you have a really good case, if leadership still isn't buying in, it's kind of where do you go from there? Because obviously, if you only have one or two people leading a global enablement team, they can only do so much. And I think that kind of ties into the bandwidth comment as well. So it's, how do you get that buy-in to get the resources to really do all the work that is possible?
Yeah, it's so helpful, and part of it is making sure that we're looking at and speaking the same language, so to speak, as the people that we're talking with, right? Leaders, there are some tabs that every leader at every organization has up every single day, and they're refreshing constantly. If it's in sales, it's probably a sales dashboard or a new product adoption dashboard or a churn dashboard. To Kate's point, are we talking about things that they care about, that our leaders care about, or are we talking about things that we believe will be helpful? And how do we, if we're not talking about the same thing, how do we make sure that we're all speaking that same language, we're all connecting in the same way? Kate, awesome contribution. Thank you. Ashley, I saw your hand came up too. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Definitely just wanted to add to what Kate and Michelle said around metrics and measurement. I think the biggest obstacle is, yes, knowing what metrics to look at, and your leaders can tell you these are the specific data points we want to focus on. But the challenge for us in enablement is, okay, well, how do we link specific behaviors to those data points? And a lot of the time, the lines can be very blurred because there's external factors of impacting the behaviors that we can't measure or that we can't see as well.
Yeah, there's intangibles. It's not to say they're not important, right? But sometimes we can take more credit than none and less credit than all for the success or failure of something. And it's finding those right moments and how do we balance that with justification, balance that with data. Thank you for that, Ashley. So if we think then about the challenges, let's flip it to the other side. In the chat once again, what are and let me drop this so that we can split these to make it a little easier to read it. There we go. What are the specific things that we are doing to provide value? So if we are experiencing these challenges, what are a few things that we're doing today to make sure that we are valuable, that we are seen, that we are heard? Let's go ahead and put those answers in the chat once again as well. And Timmy, I saw you with a note on the back end about delivering quick wins. Timmy, could you tell us a little bit more about that? And I'm going to amplify this so that everybody can see that. Oh, you just did. Thank you for me.
Of course.
Timmy, tell us more.
Yeah. Here at my current role, they had never had an enablement practitioner. So while I wanted to come in with a strategic roadmap of what that would look like, what enablement would look like in 12 months' time, I also wanted to deliver those quick wins so that internal stakeholders, sales leadership, and also the reps themselves understand what value I can deliver, whether it's content, learning and development, training, and then tying that to the business metrics that we're tracking, lead conversion, win rates, net revenue retention, things like that, because I've been stuck on problems in the past and I might get worked up and try and build something in 90 days. And someone might be asking, hey, where is this product or tool? But if you're working with a very small team, you can deliver things in as short as 5 business days, 2 weeks, what have you, and then notching that on your accomplishment list while also keeping your eye on the long-term vision and working on those longer, more strategic initiatives.
Yeah. All right, Timmy. So for those that may just be switching into a new organization or part of a new restructuring, what's one example of something you did that was a quick win, something that maybe we could replicate fast? And Timmy, I'll stick with you on that one. What's maybe one example of something that you did?
Yeah, I would say right now is the implementation of AI into our organization. We had to figure out a way how to scale role plays as we grew our team in Q3, implemented ChatGPT for one-on-one role plays, which is saving me, probably 20 hours a week, not having to do one-on-one role plays and actually just handing it off to an AI. And then, of course, going in there, not policing it, but reviewing the calls, the role plays, making sure that we're saying the right things, that the AI is actually delivering the feedback that it needs to. But it's been a tremendous help for scaling coaching, especially with a team of, I would say, 50% new hires starting in July.
That's great. And Clark, you spoke about AI as well. Could you hop off mute if you're in a position to do so? Sure. Kind of what comes to mind as you think of that as a quick win or a way to provide value?
Yeah, sure. Introducing AI is really the ultimate digital assistant and not this scary new thing that very few people understand by just giving people day in the life use cases. And then I've been doing kind of an internal roadshow across multiple teams that I support for our go-to-market organization. Literally just joining like a manager weekly meeting and saying, hey, I just need 5-10 minutes. I want to show you guys something and then get you doing something that you can immediately apply today. And so, putting it in their hands, taking the fear away from it and using the concept of micro learnings so that it's not this huge lift or this massive initiative, but really more to this organic groundswell.
Yeah, maybe that boils down to a single learning objective, right? It's just, I'm not going to try to change the world here. I just want you to get better at one thing. I have come to know those as PSAs in the context of a problem, a solution, and then some sort of action that whoever's watching this can take, right? Here's the problem, right? I am having a hard time getting new people on the phone. Here's the solution. You can use this value building approach to start value from the initial conversation. And here's the action. You have, however many calls you need to make this week, find 3 occasions to use this formula to see how it works for you, right? Some sort of problem, solution, action that we can give that you can digest in 90 seconds or less, hit the road and just keep going for it. And you're seeing some plus ones on that too, Clark. Thank you for that contribution. Before we move on, let's just take 15 to 20 seconds. Just scroll back up to where I dropped the 3 equal signs. Look in the chat. Drop an emoji if you agree with that or you think that might be a good suggestion in terms of ways that we could provide value as well. Some really good contributions here. I love the relationship building, the prioritization. I've seen you come up a few times too. Excellent. Thanks across the board for the contributions here. This came from one of our Enablement Squad members. I think it's worth just a quick call out here. Dave Sweeney, who I don't see on the chat, he messaged me ahead of time. I know he's right towards the end of the day, so he may or may not be on, but I still wanted to celebrate him. If you're not following him on LinkedIn, great individual with a lot of good contributions to the community that we can learn from. There was this post that he shared as I was preparing for this webinar that really jumped to me. Enablement impact is revenue impact. And he goes on to talk about how their goal, their being our stakeholders, our internal partners, is our goal. So whatever they're focused on, we should be focused on too. And then he ends this with, if we can do that, then we can drive towards those same goals in a way that's the foundation of building alignment. I find that there's nothing more frustrating as an enablement expert when they're just not bought in. You know, we've worked so hard, spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours to try to get someone to see the value of what we can do. And our partners just don't see it. Like, yeah, like put it in the corner with the rest of them or something like that. We work so hard. You know, and that's something that people outside of our space may not fully understand or appreciate. I think we've all heard some version of the iceberg analogy of all the stuff we do under the surface so that people can experience that small little bit above. So as Dave described it, that goal of aligning our goal, making sure that we're thinking in their terms, how does that help us to be more successful? Revenue is a part of it. Here are just a few other things that we can look at from true enablement. So maybe it's onboarding. Most companies have some sort of measure of success or a standard of excellence that they need every person on their team to be delivering at a certain level. And so if the leadership is looking at that to say, yes, this is a good hire and moving in the right direction, how do we start aligning and reporting back and sharing those numbers as well? Content effectiveness, not just are they using the content, but we use a number at Indeed over and over again called attributed revenue or correlated revenue, right? This isn't saying that I created a case study and it generated this much money, but what we were able to start reporting is this particular case study was used this many times. And that because it was used, let's say it was used 10,000 times over a 90-day period of time. What we saw is that of those, 80% of those deals closed. Now, we can't take full credit for that, but we start talking in terms of here's a resource that we created and we are seeing people use it. And as a result, we're seeing those people to do it. And if you can compare that to people, I'd love to have full adoption of everything we do. But until we don't have full adoption, we have two really nice numbers. People that do the thing and people that do not do the thing, right? And if you can say, hey, let's do the exact same study 2 times. Let's look at it from the perspective of the people that use this collateral or attended this training or had this experience. And what are we seeing in terms of close rate or churn reduction or whatever number we think we can change? And then let's look at it again. Who are the people that didn't use the thing? Are we hopefully outperforming that number of the people, you know, that are using it versus not using it, right? Like we want to make sure that the ones that are using it are having a better experience. So that's a great way to measure effectiveness as we have those conversations. And then internal customer satisfaction, I do think this is an important number. That net promoter score, you know, how likely would you be to recommend a friend or a colleague to this experience, to this product, to this training? That is important. Well, it's not, I think, the paramount. If they don't have a good experience, if they don't see value in it, it's so hard to move someone down the funnel. So let's go back once again. There's this QR code. I'll drop this up. Let's talk again about how we're actually providing value today. So if you go back in the app and you scan it, how do you measure enablement success today? You can get in there and once again, you can scan it. And I'll drop that link once again into the chat. And you can also see that's up on the top. It's coming in for you. Once you start typing it in, here we go. The link is coming. It's there. All right, here we go. So there's the link if it's a little easier to use it in that capacity. Once you type those in, you can just hit submit and it'll come in for you too. We're already seeing a few leading indicators, sales velocity. Keep going. We'll give everybody another 30 seconds to enter these in. Time to first deal. I think that's a great metric. What I've also heard many companies are starting about this time to second deal. right? Sometimes people can trip and fall or get lucky or pick up a loose lead and close that. Can they do it again? And so I think if we're able to report on that, super helpful. Task completion, right? Something that's easily tracked. And I would challenge for task completion. I think that's a great start, but are those tasks valuable, right? Are people actually moving the needle for it? So I think the task completion is great and something we can easily report on. How do we take it to the next level and make it even more valuable too? Give everybody another 15 seconds. I still see people are still typing in. Please do submit it. So even after I'll bring back to the screen to the main part of it, we'll keep talking on this too. Yeah, so revenue impact, we're seeing that come up a few times. Win rates, CSAT, average handling time. So maybe there's a metric related to customer satisfaction that we're trying to get a resolution on first call, or we're trying to get a resolution within a certain period of time. Are we seeing that happening consistently? Awesome. Keep it going for those that are still typing in terms of the contributions. Once again, I think the value here is to remind ourselves that there's a lot of different ways that we can be measuring success, but we should have something in our pockets that we can do consistently. And it always hurts, or it's always helpful in those moments just to ask, what are the numbers that are most important to you? How are you going to determine if I did a good job with this experience with your people? Especially in sales, but really for any revenue role, anytime they're with us, it's an investment and they could be doing something else. And so are they seeing the expectation, the return that they're looking for? And to Cassie's point before, sorry if I'm saying it wrong in there, if maybe their expectation is unrealistic, I want them to go through this one training, and after they go through this one training, 100% close rate. Awesome. I want that too. It's never going to happen, right? Like being able to push back and say, that, nope, I don't think we can make that work. How are you measuring this? Yeah. So we hear some of those come in. It's really important as we're thinking about it to make sure to push back and in some case stand our ground if it doesn't make sense, or if we know that we can't do it, if there's no data to indicate that it's been done like that before, setting smaller benchmarks or goals to move forward before we set that big solve all our problems in a 30-minute session. I'd be remiss on the concept of measurement if I didn't remind us. For many of us, this is probably a language we speak every day, but I find in every conversation I have with enablers, there's some people that this is the very first time you heard it. Now, with 6 minutes left, we're not going to have a full in-depth conversation about the Kirkpatrick model. But what we can do is introduce this as a reminder to everybody. 15 years ago, it really started and finished at the bottom for so many of us. Did you have a great time? Awesome. And if you did, that's the end of it. And you're like, thank you so much for completing that survey. Maybe we even try to get more clever of like, hey, do you feel like you learned more? Or, hey, do you feel like you benefited from this? But it still comes down to, did you have a good experience? Working our way to, did you learn something? This is great through an assessment, simple tests, role play, practical, anything that we can give them to see if what they needed to learn, they've consumed. And then, are we actually changing that behavior? Are we actually having an impact? If you're not using a conversational tool like Gong, this could be a great tool to look at. But if it's not Gong, maybe it's scorecards, working with leaders where they're responsible for checking things off and making sure the behaviors are happening consistently. And most importantly, the results. Are we actually seeing a change as a result of the things that we're doing? So not an exhaustive list, but following this, I'll make sure we provide some more resources. If this is a new idea for you, this is a language we should be thinking about. And it also is a great way to build. You start at the top and you work your way down. So what are the results that you're trying to change? Okay, if we want to change those results, what are the behaviors we need? And if we need those behaviors, what do they need to learn to get those behaviors? And if we can get them to learn, what sort of experience do we need to create so that they're going to be best suited to learn? Kirkpatrick, I'll make sure we include a link following so that people can support that as well. Great way to reinforce. As we're coming to a close, I am such an incredible geek for acrostics. And so I'm going to leave you with this, and I'm going to ask everybody to think critically about what commitments we can make. But these are 6 things that as this evolution continues, spelling evolve, that we can all should be committing to or moving forward, thinking about every single day. The first is empower. We want to make sure when we are working with our reps that we are equipping sellers with the knowledge, the skills, the tools they need to really sell in this modern landscape. The V is for value. We want to drive value-driven experiences throughout that customer journey, winning over the discerning buyer, making sure that what we provide is valuable to our reps, what the reps provide is valuable to the consumer. The O is to optimize, and came up a few times in this discussion. How do we make sure that we're aligning teams, processes, technologies, make sure those workflows are all streamlined together in a way that can be helpful, that can be valuable, and replicated again? The L is leverage. How do we actually champion the impact of the enablement initiatives that are actually happening? If we can do this really well, it's not just a conversation that says, I think we should. We can say, the evidence says that this number is important. And what we've found is that when we focus this sort of training on that evidence, we can solve it. And therefore, my recommendation is that we move forward in this way, in this capacity. It creates so much stronger of a business relationship when it's not just, hey, it sounds like it would be fun. I think it would be a great idea. The V is for venture. So we should be challenging ourselves to go beyond what we just do on a normal day to day, right? There are broader scopes. There are probably teams that the business hasn't asked us to get involved with yet that we would benefit from immensely, and the organization would benefit immensely if we started working with that, creating that unified engine for everybody that may be influencing or moving forward. And then the E, we talked about this before, but sometimes as First Lady Reagan introduced the world to, we just need to say no, right? We just need to say no to some requests to allow us to focus more deliberately on others. Think about resource constraints. Think about requests that don't clearly align with a larger strategy. Or maybe there's insufficient information that tells us that this is actually a problem. These 6 aspects are so immensely important if we want to make sure that we are moving forward in a positive way. I'd recommend grab a screenshot of this just as a little reminder for you. We'll make sure to send this out with a couple more tips following the session as well. As we're concluding, the last thing here to consider is what is one thing that we can actually do. Let me get this showing it so you can see what I can see. What is one thing in enablement that you can commit to doing as we're leaving the session today? As you're filling that out, I'm going to hand this back to Michelle. Michelle, if you want to close us out, give us some final inspiration and next steps that we can be focusing on as well.
Nate, I got to tell you, I've got nothing after that because that was an amazing presentation. I feel like I learned so much, and I love the engagement and everybody contributing as well. For those of you who were able to join, thank you so much for coming. We will have this recording available for those who could not attend, and for those who want to watch it again and take a few pointers, get that Evolve screenshot. And Nate, I want to say a special thank you to you for joining us on your birthday. A very, very happy birthday to you. We are so lucky that you were able to join today. And that is all I got. If anybody wants to jump off of mute and say happy birthday, feel free to do so. And I think we'll end with that.
Excellent. Well, I have a little bit of, and at this point forward, I'm on borrowed time. So if anyone wants to chat, stick around for a minute. Maybe there's a big burning problem you wanted to talk about. I'd be happy to do that. If not, happy holidays, everybody. Thank you for being a part of this discussion.